It was the first Monday of the new school year, and the sun poured through the tall windows of Westbrook Academy's main hall. Students were hurrying to their classes, carrying fresh notebooks and wearing the nervous excitement of a new term. Among them was Lena, a quiet girl with deep brown eyes and a confident, almost mysterious smile. She had just transferred to Westbrook from another city, and no one knew much about her. She didn't speak much in the hallway, but when she did, her voice carried a calm assurance that made people stop and listen. That morning, the school principal, Mr. Whitman, was making his usual rounds, greeting students with a mix of politeness and formality. When he reached Lena, he paused. "You must be the new student," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Where did you transfer from?" Lena smiled softly. "It's a bit complicated," she replied. "I've lived in a few different countries." Mr. Whitman raised an eyebrow. "Really? And you managed to keep up with your studies through all that moving?" "Oh, I've learned a lot from moving," Lena said, her voice warm but steady. "Languages, especially." The principal chuckled. "Well, that's impressive. How many languages can you speak?" Lena's lips curved into a subtle grin. 7. For a second, Mr. Whitman thought she was joking. But the look in her eyes told him she wasn't. And what she said next would make him forget the noise of the hallway entirely. Dalmar. Whitman tilted his head, unsure if he'd heard her correctly. 7. You mean, conversationally? He asked, half skeptical. Lena's grin widened. Fluently, she said without hesitation. Several students nearby, who had overheard, began to whisper. A boy from Lena's new class smirked. "Come on," he muttered loud enough for others to hear. "Nobody our age speaks 7 languages." But Lena didn't flinch. She turned her attention back to the principal and spoke again, this time in flawless French. "Je peux vous assurer, monsieur, que je n'y plaisante pas." Mr. Whitman blinked, processing the words. "That was perfect French," he said, surprised. Without missing a beat, Lena switched to Spanish, her tone smooth and confident. "Y puedo seguir en cualquier idioma que Elijah." The whispers grew louder. 2 students' jaws literally dropped. Then Lena moved to Mandarin, her voice precise and melodic, the hall suddenly falling silent except for her words. Mr. Whitman's expression shifted from mild amusement to genuine awe. Still, he wasn't prepared for the next thing Lena would say, a sentence that would leave him completely speechless. Lena glanced around the hall, her gaze locking on a nervous-looking exchange student standing a few feet away. He had been struggling with his locker combination earlier, muttering in his native language, Japanese. Without warning, Lena walked over and spoke to him in flawless, natural Japanese, her words rolling effortlessly as if she'd lived there her whole life. His eyes lit up instantly. The boy responded in rapid Japanese, his tone shifting from surprise to relief, as if a huge weight had been lifted. Students nearby stared, unable to understand but clearly sensing something important had just happened. Lena then turned back to Mr. Whitman and, in English, said calmly, "He's been having trouble finding his classroom. I just told him I'd walk him there after this." The principal was still processing the fact that she had just spoken 4 different languages in under 2 minutes. "Lena, how did you learn all of this?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. She gave a small shrug. "Life gave me the lessons. I just paid attention." And then, with the entire hallway watching, Lena leaned in slightly toward Mr. Whitman and said something in a language no one around could recognize, a language that made the principal's eyes widen in shock. The unfamiliar word seemed to hang in the air. Mr. Whitman froze, his eyes narrowing as if searching his memory. Then, slowly, he whispered, "That's Old Greek. Hardly anyone knows it anymore." Lena nodded. "It's actually ancient Greek," she clarified softly. "The kind scholars spend years trying to read. My grandfather taught it to me before he passed away." By now, the hallway was completely silent. Even the students who had been rushing to class had stopped, curiosity pinning them in place. The boy Lena had helped earlier stepped forward, bowing slightly to her in gratitude before hurrying off to his room. Several other students began to look at her differently, the smirks replaced with something closer to respect. Mr. Whitman exhaled slowly. "You understand, don't you, that speaking 7 languages isn't just rare, it's extraordinary?" Lena's expression softened. "It's not about being extraordinary, sir. It's about connecting with people, in their own words." For a moment, the principal simply stared at her, trying to find the right thing to say. But before he could speak, a voice from behind interrupted. It was a teacher, holding a stack of papers. "Mr. Whitman, we might have a situation, and I think Lena can help." Mr. Whitman turned toward the teacher, who looked slightly flustered. "What kind of situation?" he asked. The teacher glanced at Lena, then back at the principal. "One of our new exchange students from the science program, he's in the nurse's office right now. He doesn't speak English, and he's having trouble explaining what's wrong. None of us can understand him." Lena's eyes lit up with curiosity. "What language does he speak?" The teacher hesitated. "I think it's Portuguese." Lena gave a small, knowing smile. "I can handle that." Before anyone could react, she was already walking toward the nurse's office, her footsteps quick but steady. Mr. Whitman and the teacher followed, exchanging looks of disbelief. When they entered, they saw a boy sitting on the cot, looking pale and anxious. He was speaking rapidly in Portuguese, trying to gesture at his stomach. The nurse stood nearby, clearly lost. Lena stepped forward and began speaking in gentle, fluent Portuguese, her tone calm and reassuring. The boy's eyes widened, and within seconds, his posture relaxed. She turned to the nurse. "He's just dehydrated. He skipped breakfast and hasn't had water since yesterday because he didn't know where to find the cafeteria." The nurse nodded in relief and hurried to get him some water. Mr. Whitman stood in the doorway, watching Lena as if she had just rewritten the definition of remarkable. And in that moment, he realized, what she would tell him next might just change how he saw his entire school. As the boy drank water, Lena sat beside him, still speaking in Portuguese, making sure he felt understood. When he smiled faintly, she returned it before standing and turning to the principal. "Mr. Whitman," she said softly, "you have students here from all over the world, but very few ways to truly connect them." He raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Lena took a breath. "This school is full of brilliant people, but language is a wall for some of them. A wall that can be taken down." The nurse glanced up from tending to the boy. "She's right. We've had problems for years with international students feeling isolated. It's not just about classes, it's about belonging." Mr. Whitman folded his arms, thinking. "And you're suggesting, what, exactly?" Lena's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. "Let me start something here. A language connection program. We could teach students basic phrases in each other's languages, help them communicate, and build friendships. I could even lead it." The principal studied her for a long moment, the weight of her words settling in. He could already see how something like that could transform the school's culture. But before he could answer, the intercom crackled to life with an urgent announcement, and Lena's idea was about to be put to the ultimate test. The intercom buzzed, and the secretary's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Attention, staff. We need immediate assistance in the main courtyard. There's been a misunderstanding between 2 groups of visiting students. It's getting heated." Mr. Whitman's head shot up. "What kind of misunderstanding?" The voice continued, "They don't speak the same language, and no one can calm them down." Lena didn't wait for permission. She grabbed her backpack and was already halfway out the nurse's office. "I'll handle it," she called over her shoulder. The principal and the teacher hurried after her, struggling to keep up. When they burst into the courtyard, they saw exactly what the secretary meant. two groups of students from different exchange programs standing opposite each other, voices raised, gestures sharp and defensive. A crowd had formed, phones out, ready to record. Lena stepped into the center without hesitation. She addressed the first group in Italian, her words quick but warm, hands held open to show she meant peace. The tension in their faces began to ease. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to the second group and switched into Arabic, her tone just as calm, explaining the same message. The entire courtyard fell into a stunned hush as they watched the argument dissolve in under a minute. The two groups even exchanged hesitant smiles. Mr. Whitman stood at the edge, absolutely floored. But what Lena said next, in perfect English, so everyone could hear, would be the line that made the entire school talk for weeks. Lena looked around at the students who had gathered, her voice steady but carrying enough weight for the courtyard to hear. "Words can build bridges or walls," she said. "Today, we chose bridges." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a few students started to clap. The sound grew until the entire courtyard erupted in applause, not just for what Lena had done, but for how effortlessly she had done it. The two groups of visiting students shook hands, their earlier frustration replaced with awkward laughter. Several people from the crowd approached Lena, asking if she could teach them a few phrases in different languages. Mr. Whitman stepped forward, his expression a mix of pride and disbelief. "Lena," he said, "about that language connection program. Consider it approved. And I want you to lead it." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Gladly, sir." As the bell rang and students began heading to their classes, whispers spread through the halls about the new girl who spoke 7 languages and stopped a fight without raising her voice. And for the first time in a long while, Mr. Whitman felt certain, Westbrook Academy was about to change for the better. Later that afternoon, Lena sat alone in the library, surrounded by a small stack of books, each in a different language. She wasn't studying for a class, she was preparing lesson ideas for the program she had just been given the green light to start. The sound of footsteps made her look up. It was Mr. Whitman, holding a folder. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, placing it on the table. Inside were enrollment forms. At least 30 students had already signed up for her program, just from hearing about what happened in the courtyard. Lena's eyes widened. "They've already joined?" The principal nodded. "News travels fast here. And you've clearly inspired them." She smiled, flipping through the pages. Students from all grades, all backgrounds, eager to learn. This was bigger than she had imagined. Mr. Whitman hesitated, then said, "Lena, earlier today, when you spoke ancient Greek to me, how did you know I'd understand it?" Lena's expression turned thoughtful. "When you first spoke to me, you used a phrase in English that comes directly from Greek philosophy. Most people don't notice that. I guessed you'd know the origin." The principal chuckled softly, impressed. "You read people as well as you read languages." Lena just shrugged with a gentle smile. "Languages aren't just words, sir. They're the way we see the world." What neither of them knew yet was that Lena's gift would soon reach far beyond the school, and put her in the center of something much larger. 2 days later, Lena was in the middle of helping a small group of students practice basic phrases in different languages when the door to the classroom opened. In stepped a woman in a dark blazer, carrying a press badge clipped to her pocket. "Excuse me," the woman said, scanning the room before her eyes landed on Lena. "Are you the student who stopped the courtyard argument?" Lena blinked. "I suppose that's me." The woman smiled warmly. "I'm Karen Miller, local news reporter. We've been hearing about you from students, parents, even a few teachers from other schools. I'd like to do a story on your language program." The room buzzed with excitement. A few students exchanged wide-eyed looks, clearly proud to be part of Lena's class. Mr. Whitman, who had followed the reporter in, gave Lena a small nod. "If you're comfortable with it, I think this could be a wonderful opportunity." Lena hesitated for a second, then smiled. "All right. But I don't want it to be just about me. It's about what we can all build together. The reporter's grin widened. Exactly the kind of message we need. That evening, the news segment aired, clips of Lena speaking different languages, laughing with students, and explaining the goal of her program. What happened next shocked everyone, including Lena, because by the next morning, her story had gone viral far beyond the local news. By sunrise, Lena's phone was buzzing non-stop. Her social media accounts, which she rarely used, were flooded with messages. Some were from old friends congratulating her, others from complete strangers thanking her for bringing people together in a world that needs it. When she arrived at school, she found Mr. Whitman waiting for her in his office. On his desk was a stack of printed emails. "These came in overnight," he said, pushing them toward her. "Universities, international organizations, even a language learning company in Switzerland, they all want to speak with you." Lena's eyes widened. "Me? I'm just a high school student." Mr. Whitman smiled. "Apparently, the world doesn't see you that way anymore." In the hallway, students greeted her with a newfound respect. Some even tried out phrases she had taught them the day before, making her laugh. But amid the excitement, Lena felt a quiet weight settle on her shoulders. She had always believed languages could unite people, now she had the chance to prove it on a much larger scale. That afternoon, as she sat in her program's classroom, a new face appeared at the door. A tall man in a tailored suit, with a subtle accent, introduced himself. "My name is Daniel Rossi. I work with the United Nations, and I believe your talents could help us with a very delicate situation." Lena's pen froze above her notebook. "The United Nations," she repeated, her voice a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Daniel Rossi stepped inside, lowering his voice. "There's an ongoing misunderstanding between two small communities overseas. They've tried formal translators, but tensions are high. What they need is someone who can speak not just the words, but to the hearts of both sides." Mr. Whitman, who had been standing in the corner, looked stunned. "She's still a student," he began cautiously. Daniel nodded. "We're not asking her to negotiate politics, just to help open the door to understanding. Sometimes, a single voice can make people listen in ways official channels can't." Lena sat back, thinking about the boy in the nurse's office, the courtyard fight, and the students who now filled her classroom every day, learning to greet each other in new languages. She had seen what could happen when people truly understood one another. Finally, she smiled. "All right. If my voice can help, I'll do it." A week later, Lena found herself standing in a modest community hall thousands of miles away, speaking fluently in two languages back and forth, translating not just words but emotions. Faces softened, tensions eased, and for the first time in months, the two sides agreed to meet again, peacefully. When she returned to Westbrook Academy, students greeted her with cheers. But Lena simply waved them off with a modest smile. 7 languages, she told them, isn't about being special. It's about making sure no one feels like they don't belong. And from that day on, Lena's classroom became more than just a place to learn words, it became a place where bridges were built every single day.